My husband and best friend started sleeping together while I was away. Helping my sick mother, I caught them through the nanny cam I forgot was still running in our living room. I'm not even sure where to begin because thinking about everything that's happened still makes my chest tighten. I never imagined that I would be this woman, heartbroken, betrayed, and sitting here trying to piece together where it all went wrong. But here I am, writing this in the hope that maybe getting it out will help me breathe again. I'll be using fake names because I don't want anyone involved to recognize themselves or hurt my son further. My name is Emily, I'm 35, and I've been married to Jason, 39, for almost 10 years. We have a 4-year-old son, Liam, who is the absolute light of my life. I work part-time from home as a copy editor, so I can take care of Liam while Jason works full-time as an engineer. He's always been the provider, which in recent years has morphed into an excuse to be emotionally and physically unavailable. Late nights, weekend calls, always tired. I chalked it up to stress. We've had rough patches, but I thought it was just life. Then, 2 months ago, my mom had a mild stroke. She lives alone in a small town 5 hours away. I didn't hesitate. I packed a bag and left to be with her during her recovery. I originally planned to bring Liam with me, but between the hospital back and forth and the fact that she lives in a tiny second-story apartment with no elevator, it didn't seem fair or safe for him. Jason couldn't come either. He was in the middle of a huge deadline and said he couldn't take time off. That's when I made the decision that I still regret every single day. I asked my best friend, Rachel, 34, to come stay at our house and help watch Liam while I was gone. I've known Rachel since college. We were inseparable back then, roommates, bridesmaids in each other's weddings, the kind of friendship people envy. She's been through a nasty divorce recently and had just left her job, so I thought it might be good for her to be around people who cared. Plus, she adores Liam. She's always treated him like her own nephew. I trusted her completely. Not just with my son, but with my home, my husband, my entire life. Before I left, I showed her around, gave her the spare key, even set her up with the baby monitor app I use to check on Liam when I'm away. It connects to our nanny cam in the living room, just a regular indoor camera that I mostly use for peace of mind. I gave her the login, told her it was optional, just in case something came up and I wanted to check in. She laughed and said, I'm not going to let anything happen to your boys. Promise. And I believed her. The first week I was away, everything seemed normal. Jason would text me that Liam was doing great, that Rachel was being a huge help. Rachel even sent me a few pictures. Liam eating pancakes, coloring on the floor, snuggled up for bedtime. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have a best friend like her, someone who would step in without hesitation. But something started to feel off. It wasn't anything dramatic, just little things, like Rachel not answering texts as fast, or Jason being strangely short with me on the phone. When I asked to FaceTime with Liam, Jason said he was already asleep, even though it was barely 7:30 p.m. A few times, he said Rachel had taken him out to the park when I asked what they were up to, but Liam didn't mention it the next day when I called. Still, I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was stressed, tired, overwhelmed by being at the hospital with my mom. I didn't want to be that wife, the naggy, insecure, jealous one. Then came the day I opened the Nanny Cam app. Not for any real reason, just instinct, I guess. I was lying in bed, exhausted, and thought maybe I'd check to see if Liam was watching his favorite cartoon before bedtime. I pulled up the live feed. The living room was dark. The timestamp read 9:52 p.m. At first, I didn't see anything. Then the screen lit up as a light flicked on in the hallway. I saw Jason, shirtless, walking into the living room. Then Rachel followed him in. Wearing one of my robes, I froze. I told myself maybe I was imagining it. Maybe they were just talking. Maybe she borrowed it to go to the bathroom, and God, even typing that now feels pathetic. Because what happened next confirmed everything in the worst way possible. I didn't blink. I didn't breathe. I just stared at my phone, gripping it so hard I thought I might crack the screen. The live feed from the nanny cam kept rolling like some kind of sick movie I didn't buy a ticket for. Rachel stepped up to Jason. She said something I couldn't hear, then laughed. touching his chest like she owned it. Jason didn't flinch. He leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a drunken mistake. It wasn't one of those "what are we doing" kind of moments. It was slow, familiar, rehearsed. My ears were ringing. My stomach twisted so hard I had to run to the bathroom and throw up. The betrayal hit in layers. First, my husband, my partner of almost a decade, was cheating on me. Then the realization that it wasn't just anyone. It was Rachel, my best friend, the woman who held my baby when he was born, the woman I cried with after my miscarriage, the woman who stood next to me at my wedding and gave a toast about how Jason and I were meant to be. I didn't watch the rest of the footage. I couldn't. I slammed the app shut and curled into a ball on the bathroom floor like I was trying to fold myself out of existence. The next morning, I didn't call them. I didn't scream. I didn't send any angry texts. Instead, I sat with my mom in the hospital, fed her Jell-O, helped her walk the hallway with a nurse, and kept a smile glued to my face like everything was fine. Inside, I was burning. I spent that night backing up every clip I could find from the Nanny cam onto a private cloud. I scrolled through timestamps. The night I'd caught them on live view wasn't the first. Not by a long shot. I found at least 4 other nights in the past 2 weeks where Rachel and Jason had appeared together on camera. Always late at night, always when they thought no one was watching. They were careful not to do anything too explicit in view of the living room cam. But the intimacy was undeniable. There was one clip where Jason pulled her into a hug from behind, while she stood at the sink washing dishes. Another where they cuddled under a blanket on the couch while watching a movie after Liam had gone to bed. My robe wasn't the only thing she had borrowed. She wore my slippers. She used my favorite mug. She sat in my spot on the couch. She was living my life. And Jason, he let her. I felt like I was losing my mind. I kept asking myself over and over, when did this start? Had they been sneaking around before I left? Were they texting behind my back while I was still at home? I started digging. I searched Jason's email, which he'd been dumb enough to keep logged in on our shared iPad. That's when I found something that made my skin crawl. A reservation for 2 at a cabin in the mountains, booked 2 weeks before my mom's stroke. Set for the exact weekend I was supposed to be away. The same weekend Rachel had spontaneously offered to come help out. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't an impulsive mistake. They had planned this. The rage I felt was pure and raw and ugly. But underneath it was a deep, echoing kind of grief I didn't know how to process. I grieved my marriage, my friendship, my stability, all in one blow. Still, I didn't confront them. Not yet. I needed to be smart. I needed to make sure I wasn't gaslit or manipulated or made to feel like I was the crazy one. I kept everything quiet. I pretended everything was fine on the phone. I even thanked Rachel for being there for us. And when Jason asked how Mom was doing, I smiled through the phone and said, "We're managing." Then I called a lawyer. She was brutal, in the best way. She told me to gather everything, videos, emails, screenshots, bank records. She explained my rights, walked me through custody scenarios, and told me what to expect once I dropped the hammer. I felt powerful for the first time in weeks. When I returned home, I didn't say a word. I acted normal. Jason picked me up from the bus station with Liam in the back seat. Rachel was already gone by then. Just missed her, Jason said. I smiled and nodded and acted like I hadn't seen him fondle my best friend on camera. But then came the twist I wasn't ready for. Later that night, after Liam had gone to bed, Jason was in the shower. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. He had no idea I knew the passcode. It was Liam's birthday. I unlocked it, expecting maybe 1 or 2 flirty messages I hadn't seen before. What I found instead made my blood run cold. There was a hidden folder in his photo gallery. Inside were dozens of pictures of Rachel, some of her in my clothes, some in lingerie I never owned, some of them with Liam in the background, sleeping, playing, watching TV. They had been using my child as a backdrop for their sick little affair. And suddenly, this wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about protection. It took me 3 more days to gather the nerve to say something. 3 days of sleeping next to him, pretending I didn't know, pretending that everything was fine while my insides felt like they were splitting apart. I would tuck Liam into bed, kiss him goodnight, and then lie awake staring at the ceiling, wondering how the man next to me could lie so effortlessly. I wasn't just angry, I was terrified. Not of him physically, Jason has never laid a hand on me, but of the way he could look me in the eyes, kiss my forehead, and ask if I wanted tea, knowing full well what he'd done. That kind of cold, calculated deceit is the scariest thing I've ever seen up close. The confrontation wasn't cinematic. There wasn't screaming or plates thrown across the room. It was quiet. I waited until Liam was at preschool, and Jason came home early from a half day at work. I stood in the kitchen, heart thudding like a war drum. He walked in, dropped his keys on the counter, and smiled like everything was fine. "Hey babe," he said. "You want lunch?" I handed him my phone. The screen showed a paused frame from the nanny cam footage. Rachel sitting on his lap, his hands on her waist, both of them laughing. His face changed instantly, like a switch had flipped. The color drained from his cheeks, his mouth opened, then closed, like he couldn't decide which lie to lead with. "Emily, he started. "I've seen it all," I said. "The videos, the emails, the photos. I know everything." He opened his mouth again, but I held up a hand. "Don't insult me by pretending this was a one-time mistake. I know about the cabin. I know it was planned." For a moment, I thought he might deny it. He looked like he was about to, but then something in him just slumped. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he mumbled. That sentence, that pathetic, recycled cliché. I felt something inside me snap. "You didn't mean for it to happen," I repeated, my voice cold. "So Rachel just tripped and fell into your lap? You accidentally booked a romantic cabin getaway while I was caring for my sick mother. You didn't mean to keep photos of her on your phone, with our son in the background." That's when his face changed again, defensive, arrogant. "You don't understand," he said sharply. "You've been distant for years, always focused on Liam, your mom, your work." "My work?" I laughed bitterly. "You mean the part-time job I do so I can take care of our son while you bury yourself in late nights and deadlines? The work I picked up when you said we couldn't afford a second car?" He didn't respond. He just rubbed his face with his hands and sat down at the table like he was the one who needed comfort. And then he said it. "I didn't think you'd find out." That's when I knew the truth wasn't what hurt him. It was the exposure, the loss of control. He wasn't sorry. He was scared. I told him I was filing for divorce, that I'd already spoken to a lawyer, that I had everything saved. His face went blank, like he couldn't believe I was serious. "You're blowing up our family over one mistake," he said. "One mistake?" I repeated, laughing again, this time more unhinged than bitter. "You think this is one mistake?" That's when I brought up the hidden folder, the photos, the fact that Liam was in the background of so many of them. That wiped the smirk off his face. "You're sick," I said, "and I don't trust you around our son." He stood up fast, knocking the chair back. "Don't you dare say that. I love my son." "You don't get to say that anymore," I replied. "You don't love him. You used him. You exposed him to her while you were screwing her in our house, in front of our family photos, in the home I built. You don't get to stand there and talk about love." He started to pace, muttering under his breath. "You always twist everything. You always act like you're perfect." "No," I said. "I act like a mother. You clearly have no idea what that means." That's when he made the mistake of getting close, like too close. Not hitting me, but looming. Trying to intimidate. That was all I needed. I'd already asked my lawyer what to do in that situation. I picked up my phone and calmly said, "If you don't leave this house in the next 5 minutes, I'm calling the police. Your son is not going to watch you get hauled out in cuffs, but I swear to God, I won't hesitate." He froze. For a second, he didn't move. Then he grabbed his keys and left. I collapsed on the floor and shook for what felt like hours. It wasn't over. It wasn't even close to over. But that day, I reclaimed a piece of myself. Later that night, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was Rachel. She wrote, "You don't get to play the victim, Em. You've always acted like you were better than everyone else. Jason deserves to be happy. You never appreciated him." And that's when I knew. She wasn't just complicit. She believed she had won. But I wasn't done, not by a long shot. The morning after Jason left, I changed every lock in the house. I called a locksmith at 7 a.m. and didn't care that it cost triple the usual rate. I wanted every trace of him out. His clothes were bagged, his toothbrush trashed. I didn't even want his scent in the house anymore. I called my lawyer again. She filed for emergency temporary custody of Liam and a no-contact order against Jason. I also submitted a motion to prevent Rachel from coming within 100 feet of my son. I wasn't taking chances, not with Liam, not with my peace. My lawyer told me, "You're doing everything right, but now it's time to gather even more." So I did. I printed every photo, every email, every timestamp. I annotated the nanny cam footage with dates, times, context. I even dug through our joint bank statements, and that's when I found the next gut punch. Jason had been using our shared account to buy Rachel gifts, jewelry, flowers, a $400 spa package. There was a weekend charge at a boutique hotel 3 towns over from before my mom's stroke, which meant the affair didn't just start when I left. It had been going on right under my nose. I felt nauseous again, but there was more. He had also withdrawn $2,000 in cash 2 weeks before I got home. I had no idea where that money went. That's when I checked Liam's savings account, the one we started for him the year he was born. Gone. Jason had emptied it out. It wasn't a ton, just under $3,000, but it was symbolic. That account was supposed to be for Liam's future, for school or emergencies. Jason had touched it. He'd violated not just my trust, but Liam's future. That's when the heartbreak gave way to something colder. Resolve. Rachel, meanwhile, wasn't backing off. She started sending more messages, from burner numbers, from fake emails. Some were gloating. Others tried to play the victim card. One said, "You took everything from me." He was finally happy. Another said, "You don't understand what we had. He told me things he never told you." And then, disturbingly, "Liam loves me. You're just jealous." That was the one that made me shake. I took screenshots of every message, sent them straight to my lawyer. I had already requested a restraining order against her, but now I wanted it reinforced. I didn't trust her not to show up at Liam's preschool or try to contact him somehow. I wasn't dealing with just a mistress. I was dealing with someone delusional. My brother flew in from out of state the next week. He stayed with me for 10 days, helping me organize, go to court, and just breathe. He was the first person I told everything to, start to finish. And when I did, he sat in silence for a long time. Then he said, "Emily, I know this isn't what you want to hear, but Jason's always been slippery." I asked him what he meant. He hesitated. I didn't want to say anything before. I thought maybe it was none of my business. But remember 3 years ago when we all went on that beach trip together? You got food poisoning and were in the hotel room for most of the trip. I nodded slowly. Well, I saw Jason talking to some woman at the bar. They were really flirty. She touched his arm a lot. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to start something without proof. My blood went cold, so this wasn't new. This wasn't a one-time moral failure. Jason had probably always been like this. Manipulative, selfish, opportunistic. And I'd been too busy keeping everything together to notice the cracks. That night, I went through his old emails, ones from years back. And sure enough, I found messages to someone named Bree. There weren't many, and they were short, but there was enough to confirm it was an emotional affair, at the very least. Suddenly, the past few years made more sense. The late nights, the emotional distance, the way he made me feel like I was the problem. He had trained me to ignore red flags, but no more. Liam was doing surprisingly okay. I'd found a child therapist he liked. Gentle, patient, kind. He didn't know the details, of course. All he knew was that Daddy isn't living with us right now, and Mommy and Daddy had a big disagreement. But he was smart. Too smart. One night he asked, "Mommy, why did Auntie Rachel stop visiting?" I told him, because Auntie Rachel made some choices that hurt Mommy's feelings. And sometimes, when people hurt us, we need to take space to feel safe again. He nodded like he understood, then leaned into my arms and said, I like it better when it's just us. Me too, baby, me too. The last twist came 2 days ago. I got a call from Jason's coworker, someone I barely knew, but who had always been polite at work parties. He said, I don't want to get involved, but I thought you should know. Jason has been reported to HR, not just for his performance lately, but for inappropriate interactions with a female intern. My knees buckled. It wasn't just Rachel. It wasn't just Bree. It wasn't just a bad marriage. Jason was a pattern, a predator in plain sight. And I was finally done protecting his image.